Okay, so let's start with the prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam श्री राधा कृष्ण पदान सहगना ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृष्ण भानु सुत देवे प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Okay, so I think we are going to start a new chapter today. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so let's recite this verse. You can repeat after me. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Anashitah karma phalam.
Anashita karma phalam.
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha.
Satsanyati cha yogi cha.
Nani ragnirna cha kriyaha.
Na niragirna chakriyaha.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Anashitah karma phalam.
Anashita karma phalam.
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha.
Sasannyasi cha yogi cha.
Nani ragnirna cha kriyaha.
Niragirna chakriyaha.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Anashritah karma phalam.
Anashrita karma phalam.
Phalam.
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Karyam
Karma karoti yaha.
Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha.
Sasannyasi cha yogi cha.
Nani ragnirna cha kriyaha. Anyone else would like to recite?
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Anashrita karma phalam.
Anashritah karma phalam.
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha.
Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha.
Na niragnirna chakriyaha.
Nani ragnirna cha kriyaha.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Anashrita karma phalam.
Anashritah karma phalam.
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Sasannyasi cha yogi cha.
Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha.
Na niragnir cha. Na niragnir na chakriyaha.
Nani ragnirna cha kriyaha. Anyone else? Okay, let's recite the synonyms. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
The Lord said.
The Lord said.
Anashritah.
Anashrita.
Without taking shelter.
Without taking shelter.
Karma phalam.
karma phalam,
of the result of work.
of the result of work,
Karyam,
karyam,
obligatory.
obligatory,
Karma,
karma,
work.
work,
Karoti,
karoti,
performs.
performs,
Yaha,
yah,
one who.
one who,
Saha,
saha,
he.
he,
Sannyasi,
sannyasi,
in the renounced order.
in the renounced order,
Cha,
cha,
also.
also,
Yogi,
yogi,
mystic.
mystic,
Cha,
cha,
also.
also,
Na,
na,
not.
not,
Nihi,
nihi,
without.
without,
Agnihi,
agnihi,
fire.
fire,
Na,
na,
nor.
nor,
Cha,
cha,
also.
also,
Akriyah,
akriyah,
without duty.
without duty.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "One who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystique, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty." Purport. In this chapter, the Lord explains that the process of the eightfold yoga system is a means to control the mind and the senses. However, this is very difficult for people in general to perform, especially in the age of Kali. Although the eightfold yoga system is recommended in this chapter, the Lord emphasizes that the process of karma yoga or acting in Krishna consciousness is better. Everyone acts in this world to maintain his family and their paraphernalia, but no one is working without some self-interest, some personal gratification, be it concentrated or extended. The criteria of perfection is to act in Krishna consciousness and not with a view to enjoying the fruits of work. To act in Krishna consciousness is the duty of every living entity because all are constitutionally parts and parcels of the Supreme. The parts of the body work for the satisfaction of the whole body. The limbs of the body do not act for self-satisfaction, but for the satisfaction of the complete whole. Similarly, the living entity who acts for satisfaction of the Supreme Whole and not for personal satisfaction is the perfect sannyasi, the perfect yogi. The sannyasis sometimes artificially think that they have become liberated from all material duties and therefore they cease to perform Agnihotra Yagyas, fire sacrifices. But actually they are self-interested because their goal is to become one with the impersonal Brahman. Such a desire is greater than any material desire, but it is not without self-interest. Similarly, the mystic yogi who practices the yoga system with half-open eyes, ceasing all material activities, desires some satisfaction for his personal self. But a person acting in Krishna consciousness works for the satisfaction of the whole without self-interest. A Krishna conscious person has no desire for self-satisfaction. His criteria of success is the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus he is the perfect sannyasi or perfect yogi. Lord Chaitanya, the highest perfectional symbol of renunciation, prays in this way: Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagad Jagadish Kamaye, Mama Janmani Janmani Ishware, Bhavatad Bhaktir Ahituki Twai. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor to enjoy beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. What I want only is the causeless mercy of your devotional service in my life, birth after birth. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirveshesh Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine. Hare Krishna. I read the translation one more time. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "One who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty." So Prabhupada used to quote this verse very often, and I have heard this verse a lot from Pyari Prabhu also. So at times I used to think that this is Pyari Prabhu's favorite verse. Maybe not, but he quotes it very often than not. So, so we are starting with the 6th chapter, and 6th chapter, the name of the chapter itself is Dhyan Yoga. Some people also call this as Ashtang Yoga. Ashtang Yoga is the eightfold yoga system. So there are 8 limbs in the yoga. We'll talk about it later. So there are 47 verses in this chapter. Not a very long chapter, but not small also. The smallest, of course, are the 12th and the 15th chapter, which with 20 verses each. So in this chapter, we'll see that Krishna focuses a lot on sadhana. So this is one chapter where, how perfect, serious sadhana has to be done. If you want to know that, you can read this chapter. Prabhupada also focuses a lot on very serious sadhana in this chapter, in his purports. Of course, Prabhupada's purports focus, although this chapter talks about Ashtanga Yoga, but as we just read, right in the first or second line, Prabhupada says that however, this is very difficult for people in general to perform, especially in the age of Kali. So Prabhupada kinds of gives right in the first verse, the second line, he's mentioning that this process is very difficult. This is impractical. And Arjuna will also say this actually later in this chapter, that this particular process is impractical for me. So in this chapter, so it starts with a little background information. Krishna gives a little introduction first. So we will see that this chapter focuses on the mind. The whole idea is how to control the mind, shut out the working senses, and focus inwards. So mind would come again and again. This Atmanaha, Bandhur Atmana Atmanastasya, Atmeva Atmana Jita, like that. It will come again and again, the mind. And Prabhupada also writes that the focus of Ashtanga Yoga is to control the mind. Because once the mind is controlled, the mind is the enemy of the self, and it can be the friend of the self. So we'll come to that verse later. So when the mind is controlled, then it becomes the friend. But if it is not controlled, then it is the greatest enemy. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to say that the biggest non-devotee association we have is the association of our own mind. It's very insightful in one sense. We say that, okay, we don't want to have any non-devotee association, but we do have our mind with us, and it is the biggest non-devotee association for us. So the root of this chapter, so before that, so Krishna starts with some basic introduction about mind, and he gives a little background information about Ashtanga Yoga. And the key of this chapter, it starts from verses 10, goes on until 32, verse number 32, where Krishna talks about from the sadhaka to the siddha stage, how a person grows from being a sadhaka to the siddha, to the perfected yogi. So there are two technical words that Krishna will introduce, I believe, in the third verse of this chapter. One is the Araruksha. Araruksha is a person who is trying to climb the ladder, And then one is Arudha. Arudha is one who has climbed up, one who is situated on the top. So, Yoga Arudha is considered to be one who has perfected the path of yoga. So similarly, Vishnu is called Garuda Arudha. He is situated on Garuda. Similarly, Yoga Arudha means one who is situated on top of yoga. But Araruksha is a person who is trying to climb the ladder upwards. So Krishna talks about how to go from Araruksha to the Arudha stage. That's how it will progress. Now, the fifth chapter, actually, as we remember, it focuses on that Krishna actually tells Arjuna that, Arjuna, there is no difference between a Jnana Yogi and a Karma Yogi. The Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, they are the same. Sankhya Yoga Prithak Balaha Pravadanti na Panditaha. Actually, that's how Krishna puts it. One who considers that actually these are two different paths, they are not intelligent. So, and the same thing comes here also in this verse. If you see, sa sannyasi cha yogi cha. So Krishna is equating the two here also. So he has equated Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga in the 5th chapter, 4th verse, I believe. And in 6.1, he's equating sannyas and yoga. Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha. Now, who is that? Actually, I will come to that, but I was talking about the 5th chapter. So in the 5th chapter, the focus was that how Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga are the same, but Karma Yoga is easy. Karma Yoga vishishyate. No, it is better. It is special. That's how Krishna puts it. So why? Because Karma Yoga is easy. Jnana Yoga is very difficult. Karma Yoga is easy. So actually, what Krishna does in the 5th chapter is he puts aside Karma Yoga altogether, Jnana Yoga altogether. He takes that out of the options for Arjuna. So. In this 5th chapter, that is one of the specialty of this chapter. That one path is gone for Arjuna. Jnana Yoga is no longer a path. So and then Krishna focuses on that how Karma Yoga can give the same results as Jnana Yoga. So it can also help a practitioner to not get bound. So how that freedom from bondage comes, that comes through the Atma Gyan, the knowledge of the self. It basically helps the person to develop the Atma Gyan. And then it also can offer liberation. That liberation can be offered by the knowledge of Paramatma. So that for the first time, Krishna introduces Paramatma as a distinct entity who is to be understood in the 5th chapter. Now, the knowledge about the Paramatma can be developed, but for realizing Paramatma, there are 2 different paths which are introduced by Krishna in verses 27, 28, and 29. So 27 and 28, Krishna introduces Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyan Yoga, as we say. The name of the chapter, 6th chapter, is Dhyan Yoga. And 29th, Krishna talks about another path to realize Paramatma, which is Bhakti Yoga. Excuse me. So verses 27 and 28 were Sparshan Kritva Bahir Bhayams Chakshush Chaivantare Bruvaho Pranapanau Samau Kritva Nasabhyantara Charinau Yatendriya Mano Buddhir Mudir Moksha Prayanaha Vigatecha Bhaya Krodho Yah Sada Mukta Eva Saha. Basically, he talks about how by shutting out the external sense objects and keeping the eyes fixed, the vision concentrated between the 2 eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths, and then it's basically so he gives a glimpse of how Ashtanga Yoga works. So this verses 27 and 28, they are the root for the chapter 6. From these 2 verses, actually chapter 6 grows. And another path that Krishna talks about is the Bhakti Yoga. Bhuktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarvalok Maheshwaram Suradam Sarvabhutanam Gyatmamam Shantim Rachati. So this is the peace formula, I think. So Gopi gave a wonderful class on this verse on Thursday. So this is the peace formula verse of the Bhagavad Gita. So so basically this verse talks about Bhakti Yoga. Bhuktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarvalok Maheshwaram Suradam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Rachati. One who understands me to be Sarvalok Maheshwara, the proprietor of all the words, Suradam Sarvabhutanam, and who is the friend of all living entities, well-wisher of all living entities, such a person will attain lasting peace. Gyatva Mam Shantim Rachati. So this will be elaborated further in the 7th chapter. Now, interestingly, there is a similar verse where Krishna gives additional insight. That verse is in the 10th chapter. Yomam Ajamanadim Cha Vettilok Maheshwara. Again, that word Maheshwara comes. Asam Mudha Samartyeshu Sarva Papai Pramuchyate. So one who understands Krishna to be Sarvalok Maheshwara, Maheshwara is, or Vettiloka Maheshwara, the proprietor of all the planetary systems, he undiluted amongst the people who are subject to death. Asam Mudha Samartyeshu. So in the 5th chapter, 5.29, Krishna had said that such a person will attain lasting peace. Here he gives an additional thing, what he will achieve, that is Sarva Papai Pramuchyate. That's very interesting. So we'll discuss it later. So now what happens is in the 6th chapter, which grows from verses 27 and 28. So Krishna talks about Ashtanga Yoga. So the introduction itself is quite insightful. The first word is Anashritaha Karma Phalam. Such a person doesn't take shelter of the fruits of work. So Ashrita means one who takes shelter. Anashritaha means one who doesn't take shelter. There is another word that is called Upa-ashritaha, which comes in the 10th canto, if you remember, in the Ras Panchadhyaya. That's how it starts. What is it? That verse is Krishna takes shelter of the internal potency. Yoga Maya Upashrita. That's how that verse comes. I'm missing the exact verse. So that means that Krishna takes complete shelter of Yoga Maya. So that's very interesting. Krishna doesn't take shelter. Generally, Krishna gives shelter to everyone, but there it is described. Krishna takes shelter of Yoga Maya, basically to enjoy with his devotees. So now anashritah karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha. So such a person who doesn't take shelter of the fruit. Now generally materialists, they take shelter of the fruits. How does right now we have these Olympics going on, and there are so many different athletes who are competing, and they actually, how they take shelter of their fruit, they work very hard. They will do jogging and push-ups and this and that. They make themselves fit, they practice very hard, but they have their vision fixed on, they want to lift a medal. That's the gold medal that they want. I want this medal. That's how. So whereas Prabhupada explains that a perfect yogi, he doesn't work for the fruit, he work for the satisfaction of Krishna. So the motivation is very different. A materialist wants recognition, he wants some material gains, material prosperity, material followership. He wants followers, he wants people should understand me to be that I'm such a great person. That's their motivation. But a yogi or a bhakta, for him the greatest motivation is satisfaction of Krishna, that I am doing this for the satisfaction of Krishna. Now he doesn't get so much disturbed by success or failure. For him what is important is the best effort, not just effort, best effort. He has to put his best effort, and then he thinks that whatever Krishna decides, he will give it to me. So such a person is actually a yogi. So one thing we'll see that comes, is very common underlying for all these three kinds of transcendentalists, karma yogi, jnana yogi, and dhyana yogi, is renunciation of the fruits of work. Not taking shelter of the fruits of work. So Krishna says such a person who doesn't take shelter of the fruits of work, he is actually a yogi, and he's also a mystic. He's also a yogi, and not a person. And such person who doesn't light fire and who doesn't perform duty, such a person is not actually a sannyasi. So this is very insightful. This will be elaborated by Krishna in the 18th chapter. He will talk about renunciation in the mode of goodness, renunciation in the mode of passion, and renunciation in the mode of ignorance. So how there has to be a positive motivation for sannyas, it should not be based on frustration from the world. Generally the Gyan yogis, they're frustrated from the world. They are done with the, they think that this world is such a frustrating place. This is full of miseries. There is birth, death, old age, and disease. And the relationships are so frustrating. I just don't want to deal with these kind of people. So those kind of motivation, if they are there, then that is not the best sannyas. That is not in the mode of goodness. So that's how Krishna will put it in the 18th chapter. So now am I still audible? Is everyone able to hear me? Okay, I was just getting a message. I thought maybe I'm not audible. Okay, so actually now this Ashtanga Yoga, as we know, there are 8 limbs in the Dhyana Yoga. So we have Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. So there are these 8 limbs. So yamas are abstinence, things that are not to be done. We also have our 4 regulative principles. Niyamas are things that are to be observed, things that are to be done, for being successful in yoga and in the practice of yoga. Then we have asanas. Asanas are basically different bodily postures. Prabhupada will explain in one of the later purports that the purpose of the asana is that he explains that the soul, it is floating between 5 kinds of airs, pran, apan, vyanudan, and saman. And then the purpose is to basically purify the soul. So by following these different postures, basically what happens is the soul comes in a kind of a equilibrium where it is very conducive for spiritual development, basically the further development in the Ashtanga Yoga process. And after that there is pranayam. So pranayam is basically breathing exercises, which helps in controlling the mind. Even I know a lot of our Maharajas and even senior devotees, they also do pranayam. Basically that keeps the mind very clear and it helps in focusing the mind. Then we have pratyahar. Pratyahar is basically withdrawing the sense objects altogether. So now I was talking about the Arudha, the Yoga Arudha stage, and the previous stage, the Sadhaka stage. So actually it is explained that the first four samadhi, yam, niyam, asan and pranayam, these are to be done for people who are in the araruksha stage, so these are to be done along with their regular day-to-day work. So even before they take sannyas, these four things are to be done. We'll come to that verse later. We'll talk about it and we'll explain more about it. But these are the basic foundation of the Dhyan Yoga stage. This is very, very important. Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam. So once a person is able to perfect it, then he can actually do pratyahar, shutting out the senses. That's very difficult. If someone tells us that you shut out your external senses, it's very difficult for us. It's not easy. But if a person, once he progresses through these four stages, and if he is able to, at least he is getting ready for pratyahar, then it is said that he is in the advanced stage of yoga. He is getting very close to that arudha stage. So from there, pratyahar, dharana is basic level of concentration. Then dhyana is basically when a person is able to maintain that dhyan for, and he is able to absorb himself in meditation. And then finally samadhi. Samadhi is complete, the mind is completely fixed. Yatra paramata chittam niruddham yoga sevaya. That's how Krishna will put it later in the 6th chapter itself. 6th chapter is one of my favorite chapters. A lot of verses are very, very insightful and very, very, they are very, although tongue twisters, but very sweet also in one way. So samadhi will be described yatra paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya. So the mind become completely still. It's just focused on one thought or one point, and nothing can actually disturb the mind from that stage. So that is actually samadhi. So these are the 8 limbs. Now this we may say that okay, this sounds very simple, but actually it is not simple. Even if we talk about yamas, so what are the different, so there are some further sublimbs of each of these limbs. So yama has at least 5 sublimbs, which is ahimsa. Ahimsa is non-violence. We should not be, or the yogi should not be doing any kind of violence, internal or external. Then is satya. Satya is truthfulness. He should not speak any lies at all. He should always speak truth. Very, very important on the path of Dhyan Yoga. Then we have asteya. Asteya is not stealing, not taking anyone else's property. Then brahmacharya. This is very, very important. Prabhupada will focus on this. He would say that that how in the modern world they have opened these yoga studios, and they're not following. These are the very basic things. Brahmacharya is, if it is, Prabhupada says that even the thought should not come. Thought of mating with another, with opposite sex, that thought itself, if that comes, then you fall down from the stage. That's the thought. If it comes, forget about acting on that thought. And then aparigraha. Aparigraha is non-possessiveness. You should not feel that okay, this belongs to me, and everything belongs to me. So these are the 5 yamas which are very, very important. The 5 sublimbs of the first limb of Ashtanga Yoga. Then talking about niyamas. So niyamas are the things that are supposed to be done. So first is shaucha. Shaucha is complete cleanliness of the body, speech and mind. All 3 have to be cleaned. I'm not going to go into the details. Of course, we know what is the purity of body, mind and speech. Then santosh. Santosh is basically contentment, accepting the situation as it is. Sometimes we have certain situation and we are constantly disturbed about it. Why am I in such a situation? Why am I suffering like this? So basically we are not content. We are always disturbed. So that contentment has to be there. Santosha has to be there. Then tapas. Tapas is austerity, performing severe austerities. That's why it is said this is a very austere path. It's not simple. Then swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is studying, not just reading the Vedic literature. Self-study of swa adhyaya. So basically self-study. And then finally Ishwar Pranidhan. Ishwar Pranidhan is surrender to Ishwara. Ishwara, of course, they understand Ishwara to be Parameshwar, Paramatma. So that's how. So these 5 are the sublimbs of niyamas. So Yam and Niyam. So similarly, then we have asanas. There are different kinds of asanas. Basic asanas are there, and then there are advanced asanas are there. And then pranayam. Now pranayam also, there are different techniques, breathing techniques to control the mind. So it's not easy actually. If you read the, so if someone wants to understand this path in detail, the process in detail, then we have the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which are given by Patanjali. So that is considered to be the, like we have our Bhagavad Gita, they have their Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So that is considered to be the very important, and people write commentaries on Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Many different yogis will write their own commentaries, their own realizations, how they practice it, what are the realizations, what are the best practices. So like that, there are many commentaries on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So before I go any further to the next verse, I want to see if there are any questions or comments. I see there is a comment from Sugopi. She's quoting a verse. Shri Badrayana Ruvacha Bhagwan Apitaha Ratrihi. And it's very small for me.
That's the verse you were quoting, Prabhu. I just put it there because I think you were wondering what the full verse was about Upashrita.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Sugopi.
No problem.
Yeah, in the end it comes Yoga Mayam Upashritaha. Okay, any comments, corrections, questions about what I said so far?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat, Jai Sri Prabhupada.
Hare
You
Krishna,
mentioned,
Prabhuji.
yes, you mentioned some of our Maharaj also does pranayam. I wanted to know why is that?
Basically, yeah, that's what I was explaining. It basically helps clearing the mind. So the mind, it helps in focusing the mind. That's pranayam is done. Even many brahmacharis also they do pranayam. So basically, it helps in concentrating. It helps in better concentration.
Okay, so chanting itself will not be enough, like along with the four regulative principles.
So the idea is that whatever helps you to focus better, it's not that they consider what is it, pranayam to be better than chanting. So it is something that can make their chanting better. So chanting definitely is much better than pranayam, but this is an additional tool that can help in chanting better. That's my understanding about. Of course, people who do it, we can ask them how it helps them. And so I don't do it, but I know a lot of people, they talk about it in the different lectures, and I've heard from different Maharajas. I've seen videos of sannyasis doing it in the morning. So yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, corrections? Okay, if not, let's move on to the next verse. So we just did 6.1. Let's go to the 6.2 verse. Okay, so we'll just recite this verse once. You can repeat after me. Yam sanyasamiti prahur.
Yam sanyasamiti prahur.
Yogam tadvidhi pandava.
Yogam tam vidhi pandava.
Nahi asanyasta sankalpo.
Nahi
asanyasta sankalpo.
Yogi bhavati kaschana.
Yogi bhavati kaschana.
Translation: what is called renunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. Purport: real sannyas, yoga, or bhakti means that one should know his constitutional position as the living entity and act accordingly. The living entity has no separate independent identity. He is the marginal energy of the Supreme. When he is entrapped by material energy, he is conditioned. And when he is Krishna conscious or aware of the spiritual energy, then he is in his real and natural state of life. Therefore, when one is in complete knowledge, one ceases all material sense gratification or renounces all kinds of sense gratificatory activities. This is practiced by the yogis who restrain the senses from material attachment. But a person in Krishna consciousness has no opportunity to engage his senses in anything which is not for the purpose of Krishna. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is simultaneously a sannyasi and a yogi. The purpose of knowledge and of restraining the senses as prescribed in the jnana and yoga process is automatically served in Krishna consciousness. If one is unable to give up the activities of his selfish nature, then jnana and yoga are of no avail. The real aim is for a living entity to give up all selfish satisfaction and to be prepared to satisfy the Supreme. A Krishna conscious person has no desire for any kind of self-enjoyment. He is always engaged for the enjoyment of the Supreme. One who has no information of the Supreme must therefore be engaged in self-satisfaction. Because no one can stand on the platform of inactivity. All purposes are perfectly served by the practice of Krishna consciousness. Read the translation one more time. What is called renunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. So nahi asanyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaschana. If one doesn't give up the desire for sense gratification, he cannot become a yogi. So this is very important. So sankalpa, now this sankalpa is translated here as desire. So Prabhupada says sankalpa means desire for self-satisfaction. But sankalpa also means determination. What is our determination? So the materialists, they are determined to do sense gratification. In every activity that they do, it is meant for sense gratification. So there are two terms actually. One is fruitive activity and one is sense gratification. Anyone knows what is the difference between these two? What is fruitive activity and what is sense gratification? I mean, what is the difference between the two? What is the difference between fruitive activity and sense gratification? Or is there any difference between the two? Okay, so fruitive activity is an activity which is to be done that in the future, in the hope that in the future it will help me in doing sense gratification. Sense gratification means right now we do something to satisfy our own senses, like drinking liquor or eating things which we really like a lot, and then we eat it a lot. So that is sense gratification. But fruitive activity is doing some yagya, some activity today with the hope that in the future it will help me to do sense gratification. So for the materialist, their sankalpa is to do sense gratification. Every activity is motivated by doing sense gratification. This will help me. Now, of course, there is pious sense gratification that we call karma kand. Karma kand means it is sense gratification which is done according to the scriptural injunctions. So that is actually better than doing it whimsically without even the regulations of the scriptures. But when they start going towards karma yoga, then the idea is that completely giving up sense gratification. So our actions should not be motivated with a desire to do sense gratification. So the action should be motivated with a higher purpose. That higher purpose comes with the knowledge of the self. That's how Prabhupada also explains. So if we don't have the knowledge of the self and the super self or the supreme self or of the Paramatma, then a person at least should do karma kand. That's how Prabhupada. He should not cease the activity completely. Some people think that, and Krishna will also mention this in the 18th chapter, that just by giving up the activity, that is not sannyas. Just by giving up activity, stopping all material work, that is not sannyas. If our mind is not, if we don't have the knowledge of the real self, we don't have a proper purpose for sannyas, if we don't understand, if we don't have a higher purpose, we don't understand our self itself, then there is no point in taking sannyas. Then we should at least do our proper karma kand, because that way we'll have some purification will come slowly, gradually some purification will come. So that is explained in the second and the third chapter also, that and even the fourth chapter, transcendental knowledge, that how by performing different sacrifices the knowledge of the self slowly develops, so that is important. So nahi asanyasta sankalpa yogi bhavati kaschana. So that if a person doesn't give up the resolve to do sense gratification, or the determination to do sense gratification, or the desire to do sense gratification, then he cannot become a yogi. Now, of course, there are two levels. One is that the best is that we completely give up the desire, but often that is not possible. Often we have the desire, even when we become Krishna conscious, because of our previous conditioning, because of our prior indulgence into different kinds of activities, we have a desire, we have that tendency, we have that inclination to indulge in sense gratificatory activities. At least that desire comes in, that thought comes in. But the second level is that we don't act on that desire, we don't act on those thoughts, so we control our senses externally, and that's why we have those four regulative principles. So the it is understood that there might be a like a feeling, a desire, or a inclination that might come in, but at least we should restrict our senses in actually doing it. So what happens is we try to control the senses. So Shama and Dama. Shama is mind control, peacefulness, as Prabhupada translates this. Shama, Dama, Tapah, Saucha, Shantir, Arjamayocha. That's how Prabhupada, Krishna explains that these are the qualities of a Brahmin. So Shama and Dama. Shama is that the mind should be completely peaceful. Mind is peaceful means there is no desire, no thoughts coming for sense gratification itself. But if Shama is not possible, if there are thoughts there, if there are inclinations, but the next level is Dama. Dama is sense control. At least control your senses. Don't act on those desires. So what happens with that is slowly we are starving our desires out. If we keep feeding the senses become stronger and stronger, and then they ask for more. Give me more, give me more. Krishna explains that lust is like a fire which burns. No matter how much you try to satisfy the senses, they don't get satisfied. They just want more and more. They get more strong. So what we do is by doing Dhamma, by doing sense control, self control, we starve our senses of the desires. So those desires itself, slowly it will go away. So initially we might, people who used to eat meat and all, we know that one of the four regulative principle is that no meat eating, only accepting vegetarian food. So I have heard this from people. Of course, I didn't like meat at all. I wouldn't say that I never ate meat. I did, but I never had any, desire to eat meat. I never liked it. But I've heard it from the devotees who used to eat meat before coming to Krishna consciousness, that initially it was very difficult for them, but now after practicing it for so long, now even that thought, they actually become disgusted by, even if that someone brings it in front of them, they feel disgusted, because so much change has happened. So similarly, it also works for other desires also. So we have this example of Yamunacharya. So there the verse that comes is, just if the thought of physical indulgence with the opposite sex comes in my mind, then I spit at that thought. But the point is that thought comes, but when the thought comes, then we spit at that thought, but the point is that thought is coming. So the point is that we should not act on that. So slowly we have to give up the sankalpa of, or the determination to do sense gratification. And when the by that sankalpa, by giving up that sankalpa, slowly we can rise in our practice of yoga. So, but if we don't give it up, if there is no effort to give up that sankalpa, that desire, then yogi bhavati kashana, then there is no hope of becoming a yogi. So that's how Krishna puts it here. So he says, what is called renunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the supreme. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. So this theme comes repeatedly, and later Krishna will talk about that how, when our mind, the mind remains the greatest enemy of a person who is not able to control the mind. So what does it mean when a person who is not able to control the mind? It basically means that if we cannot control the desire for sense gratification, then the mind will always remain our enemy. But if we are able to control the desire for sense gratification, then the mind will become our friend, and then it will help us to grow from Araruksha stage to Yogaruda stage. So that progress will be very swift, very smooth. And this sixth chapter will basically focus on that, how to control the mind. The first is to control the senses, which might be easier than controlling the mind. And with the controlling of the senses, we should be able to control the mind at some time in the future. So the best is, as Prabhupada explains, that we are constantly engaged in Krishna conscious activities. This is practiced by the yogis who restrain the senses from material attachment, but a person in Krishna consciousness has no opportunity to engage his senses in anything which is not for the purpose of Krishna. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is simultaneously a sannyasi and a yogi. The purpose of knowledge and of restraining the senses, as prescribed in the Jnana and Yoga processes, is automatically served in Krishna consciousness. So basically, Prabhupada used to say that we have to be so full with Krishna consciousness, we have to be so full with our services for Krishna, that there is no hope, there is no chance, there is no time for Maya to sneak in. But as soon as we become relaxed in our Krishna conscious activities, then the Maya will have a chance, it will have an opportunity to sneak in. So we have to keep firm. Sometimes, we think, okay, I have done so much service today, let me take a break now. And today I will not do any Krishna conscious activity. Let me go and watch a movie and refresh myself. And that's when, Maya will come and attack. So what happens when we see that movie, then we get some thoughts of different kinds of how I should enjoy this, I should do that. We used to go to movies, and there we used to eat pakoras in the college while watching the movie, and popcorn and all. Then all those thoughts start coming in, and I used to enjoy so much with my friends and my girlfriend, and let me try to do this. So those thoughts will start coming in, and once the thought comes, then we may act on those thoughts also. So we have to be so full in Krishna consciousness, we have to be so full in our services that there is no opportunity for Maya to sneak in. If one is unable to give up the activities of his selfish nature, then Jnana and Yoga are of no avail. That's how Prabhupada puts it. So selfish nature is basically when we identify ourselves with the body. That is actually the selfish nature. Now, Pyari Prabhu quotes this very often, that once a person asked Srila Prabhupada, is it okay to be selfish? So Prabhupada said that it is okay to be selfish when we realize what is our real self. So what is our real self? I am not the body, I am the soul. So as long as we understand that I am not this body, I am the soul, then it is okay to be selfish. So because when we understand that we are not the body, we are the soul, then we will not engage into sense gratificatory activities. We will engage in those activities which are beneficial for the soul, not for the body. And what is beneficial for the soul? Activities which relates to Krishna consciousness, activities which helps in spiritual progress, in spiritual development. So if we understand the real self, then it is okay to be selfish. Otherwise, it is not okay to be selfish. We have to be very careful that I'm acting at the level of the soul, not at the level of the body. No, the spirituality starts when we are on the spiritual platform. As long as we are on the platform of the body, spirituality doesn't start. We are not even starting the spirituality. So as soon as we indulge in sense gratification, so one thing is Krishna can give us pleasure only when our consciousness is available for Krishna to give us pleasure. If our consciousness is caught at the material level, if our consciousness is caught at the level of the senses, then we are not making our consciousness available for Krishna to give us any spiritual pleasure. So the first and foremost is to stop sense gratification. Once we stop sense gratification, then our consciousness will be at the level of the self, of the spirit. And there, when we indulge in Krishna conscious activities, then we are making ourselves available to Krishna. And when we are making ourselves available to Krishna, only then Krishna can give us some realizations, some an opportunity to basically give us some spiritual pleasure. So that I just take a quick pause and see if there are any questions, comments, corrections. Anyone would like to add anything? Okay. Looks like there are no questions, comments, corrections, realizations. I just want to add one more thing. In the first verse, 6.1 in the purport, Prabhupada quotes the Shikshashtakam verse, na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam na jagadisha kamaye mam janmani janmani ishware bhavtat bhakti rahetuki tvai. So this actually I had initially when I came to Krishna consciousness, I had not actually read Shikshashtakam so much. I did come across it, but I never thought about it so much with so so seriously about this. Of course, we know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has not written any commentaries, he has not written any elaborate papers or books or anything like that. But the only composition that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has done is the 8 verses, Shikshashtakam verses, and they are actually very, very profound in one sense. And I actually realized this. I heard this verse first. I won't say first time, but in a serious way, I heard this first time in a lecture that was given by His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. I don't remember exactly what lecture it was, but he quoted this verse and then he focused on it and then he tried to explain it. And that is the time when actually this verse sinked into me. And that is when I actually started reading Shikshashtakam seriously and trying to understand what it means. And then I realized that these 8 verses are really, really profound. Those 8 verses actually gives the sum and substance of Krishna consciousness. That how we are to act in Krishna consciousness, how we have to develop a humble state of mind. And in that humble state of mind, we have to chant Kirtaniya Sadahari. Kirtaniya Sadahari, always chant Hare Krishna or always chant the names of Lord Hari. So before that, I didn't realize that. So I just, because we came across this verse in the purport to 6.1 and I missed to talk about it when we were discussing 6.1, I just thought I'll mention this point. If someone still remembers what lecture it was, I would love to hear it again. I just don't remember which lecture it was. Okay, so there is a question from Sugopi. She's asking, sense gratification is the result of fruitive actions? Not necessarily. We can't say that sense gratification is the result of fruitive actions by itself. Fruitive actions are the actions which we perform in a hope that in the future I'll be able to do some sense gratification out of those. So basically, fruitive actions could be karmakandi rituals, karmakandi sacrifices also. And the idea there is that in the future I'll get something. So sacrifice means sacrificing something which is dear to us in a hope that we will get something better in return. That is what sacrifice means. So of course, the best sacrifice is to sacrifice something valuable that we have in a hope to get the best. And that best thing is to get Krishna consciousness or service of Krishna. But karmakandi rituals, their idea is that there are so many different Agnihotra yagya, or I shouldn't say Agnihotra, but so many yagyas are there which are performed for getting like a good spouse or getting a good progeny or getting wealth. So many different kinds of sacrifices are there. So those could be called as fruitive actions. So, but there could be several sense gratification which may not be resulting from fruitive actions. They could be just be result of something good that we have done. Something good that we may have done unknowingly also for others. Fruitive actions are generally done knowingly. Okay, I want this, therefore I'm doing this. But we may have done some good karma because of which we are getting some good reactions and we are able to enjoy. So I would say fruitive actions would be when we are knowingly doing it for a particular purpose to achieve this. I'm doing this today. So that those could be considered as fruitive actions. Any other questions, comments, corrections? Okay, if not, then I think we can stop here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.
I have a question.
Yes,
Aren't Aren't all our actions fruit of actions? Because all our actions have some fruit.
Yeah, that is true, Mataji. Every action will have a fruit, but I think when we say karma kand rituals are generally, that's how my understanding is, that karma kandi rituals or rituals that are performed in a hope of getting something better, those are called as fruitive actions. But you are right that every action will generate a reaction. Now,
So
generally,
you translate karma kanda as fruit of actions. That's how you translate that.
that's my understanding, Mataji. But if you think that's not a correct understanding, please feel free to correct me.
I mean, there's always different ways to divide things and translate things. I
Yeah.
don't. That's.
I mean, generally we just say actions, but when we say fruitive actions, that means that we want to attain a particular fruit from that action, and that's where we call them as fruitive actions. Okay, I want this fruit, therefore I'm doing this action. But otherwise, any action, even if when I'm drinking water, that is also an action, and that will also generate some result. Prabhupada says that there is Panch Mahashuna. When we drink water, also that time also we are doing some violence against living entities, or when we are those Panch Mahashuna that Prabhupada explains at several places. So those are generally not called as fruitive actions. Those are just called actions. Unknowingly we are doing some kind of violence. And to counter those Panch Mahashuna, we have Panch Mahashuna, the yagyas, that 5 kinds of yagyas that everyone should perform to counter those Panch Mahashuna. But those are not known as fruitive actions. They are just called as actions, I would think.
But usually we act because we want to obtain something in general.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Yes, Madayi, that is true. Yeah. We can consider that also. Like every action could be a fruitive action. Yeah.
Anyway.
May not necessarily action which are, yeah.
Karma kanda maybe is just on a grander scale, more
yeah.
contemplation into
Right. More planned, more organized.
Yeah, I thought the karma kanda lists everything. Like if you want a good wife, you pray to Lord Goddess Uma. If you want money, you pray to some other demigod. Like they give you a list of demigods that can provide a list of whatever you're looking for, and those are listed as karma kanda activities. Whereas all, like Mother Jiva said, every action is an equal and opposite reaction. So if you're not doing it in Krishna's service, if you're motivated with any kind of selfish motive, I think that would have a reaction. But my understanding is those are general, every action has a reaction. So that's, activities and
no, that is true, Mataji. We are not debating that whether action will have reaction or not. What we are discussing is, what is fruitive action karma kand or no? That's what we are asking. We are discussing. So there is no question about that.
My understanding is if it's general, it's not karma kanda. But if you're saying specific prayers for a specific reaction to achieve, that might be listed as karma kanda. That was my understanding.
Okay.
Like specific results, you want something and you're going after a specific result.
Right.
You're working towards that result.
Exactly. So that's what we were discussing, that whether that should be called as fruitive actions or no.
I was just, comparing it like to the drink of water. You want a drink of water, so you go get a drink of water. You get the fruits of your actions.
Yeah. But that is more driven by a bodily need. I can't survive without drinking water.
But you might drink when you're not even thirsty. You just see someone else drinking water or some other drink and you want to drink.
Yeah, but drinking water, I don't consider as sense gratification. We don't say, oh, you are doing sense gratification, you are drinking water. So, but yeah, I get your point.
It gratifies your senses.
It
satisfies your senses.
Right.
Everything is sense gratification if it's not service, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I just have to expand my intelligence to understand that. Yeah, that's true. my definition of what is sense gratification. Yeah, that's
Mm.
true. If we are satisfying our senses while drinking water, that can also be sense gratification. Yes.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I think one verse summarizes everything. Attendriyo pritivancha tan tare bole kam, Krishnendriyo pritivancha dhore premo nam.
Yeah. Right.
English, please.
Okay, it might not be the exact translation, but if one's something like that, if one acts for his or her own desire, satisfaction, this is called kama or lust.
Yeah.
Versus if one works for Krishna's satisfaction, and that will be called prema, love.
Exactly.
So I guess Mataji's example, like if one thinks that, okay, this is Krishna's body, I have to perform duties for Krishna. So to support this body, I have to give it like in some water. Okay, then even drinking water will not be. Am I correct, Mataji?
Yes, and you think this is Krishna is the taste in this water. It's the consciousness.
Yes.
Right, right. And this is Krishna's energy, this body, which I'm trying to maintain, have to maintain for him. I mean, it's a very high consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I can't contemplate on it, Mataji. That how drinking water. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's very, very high consciousness. You know, I never realized that even drinking water could be sense gratification. But when you're explaining this to me, that then it's making sense to me.
But that's a nice verse, yes.
Yeah. Difference between love and lust.
Yeah. As long as we have the false ego, we're going to try to satisfy this body because we think we are this body.
Okay, I think we can stop here then. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sandhyabhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti vaishnavrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.